only 2 minutes late. Woohoo. You guys ready back there? Hi, everybody. You can move up. You like your seats? All right, you're going to make our question runner, Deirdre and Erica, work hard. We've got a couple folks that'll be handing out some flyers from Citizens Climate Lobby Higher Ed. All of these fine folks here today have tables, and you should go visit them to make sure you find all of that information, right? All right, we're only 2 minutes behind. You guys are doing great. How's your summit going so far? Doing all right? Woohoo! Excellent. Well, we just heard from the secretary, right? Making our voice heard through our vote should be the easiest and safest way for us to make our opinions known. Little fact here, right? 2024, pretty critically important election year. I think you guys are aware of this. And our goal today is really to learn about some of the environment and climate voter campaigns that are going on in our state right now, and ways that you can learn more information about how to vote, get educated on the candidates, and how to get involved in the final get out the vote push over these next few weeks, right? Today is the first day of election season, if you heard our remarks. It's not election day anymore. There's a whole season, and today is opening day. The electorate is changing almost as much as the climate. When we don't use our vote for the climate, then politicians don't listen. The polls that I'm about to share with you are great, and folks running for office do take notice of those, but they have to know that we are also going to turn out on this issue and that we care about their positions. As I said this morning, we are the majority, and we had better start acting and voting like it. From our friends at the Yale Communication for Climate Change, their last survey found that just over a third, 37% of registered voters in the US are pro-climate voters. That's huge. There's another additional 25% of registered voters who say they prefer a candidate who supports climate action. By a ratio of more than 4 to 1, we see that Americans are leaning towards supporting candidates that are going to take action. Interestingly, the Yale surveys tend to find that Hispanic and Latino voters are among the most likely. And there's good reason for that, as all of you know, in MiCAN's mission for environmental justice. These folks are impacted right now. They are going to be the most impacted, as well as our youth. And those are the folks that can come out and change these elections. The even better news is that when we talk about it, just like the secretary urged us to talk about how elections are safe and the integrity is there, the more you talk about climate change on a daily basis to your friends, colleagues, neighbors, the more we talk about being a climate voter, the more likely folks are to take that action. Because right now, folks feel like, oh, I don't know, it doesn't feel like we're the majority, Denise. I'm here to tell you that you are, and we should not be afraid to talk about our values and the things that matter, because that indeed is what rallies everyone else to do the same. After young voters, I see you out there, University of Michigan, 18 to 34, after young voters, older voters, 65 plus, are the second most likely group to be engaged and say they're prioritizing climate in their votes. Nearly 30% of 18 to 34-year-olds are climate-first voters, and nearly 17% of 65 plus are climate voters. I don't want to talk about anybody's age, but I will just point out that our panel today is intergenerational, I think. We've got a couple young folks, and we've got some folks who look a lot like me, right? This really is the heart of the movement and how we are all working together. Just normalizing talking about climate makes a difference, and that's why we wanted to do this panel with all of you today and talk a little bit about all of the efforts and campaigns you can get involved in. I hope you see some of these signs down here. One of the things that Michigan Climate Action Network has been doing is running a campaign from Earth Day to Election Day, where we have on our website, we have asked every candidate running for the Michigan House of Representatives a series of very serious climate questions that are based on the laws that we passed last fall. You can check that out and see how your folks answered. And we're also running this visibility campaign because, again, the more we talk about it and share those values with our friends and colleagues, the more we normalize that. And so we've got our climate voter signs out all around the state. There are 5 different locations and local groups around the state that are also hosting these signs. And I will tell you, these matter. Folks running for office look at these signs, right? So it's on purpose that they look kind of like a candidate sign. And the greatest compliment that we could have gotten was from a constituent who bought one the other day and said, "This is the only sign I need," right? Because the climate movement is intersectional. As you're going to hear today, it's about young people, it's about health, it's about our democracy, about justice. It's about all of those things. So when we say that we're climate voters, we're saying that we are for a livable future for all. And it's super important. The folks on the stage here, their campaigns are just as interesting, and that's why they're all here to tell you about them. We've got a really esteemed panel. On the far right, Lisa DeBuno is the president and founder of Michigan Clinicians for Climate Action. Next to her is Janet Zine, the co-founder, director, everything sometimes with many people. Nate's also out here of Grand Rapids Climate Coalition, and I have to admit we stole the whole sign idea from them. They started it first, and we're going to get one of hers up here on the stage. Marielle Cortez, next to her, is the student. You heard from Dr. Jenna Bednar, who is the faculty lead. Marielle is the UMich Votes co-president of Turn Up, Turn Out, so getting those students out to vote here on campus. Sandy Sorna-Elsner is the Environmental Network Chair for the League of Women Voters here in Washington County. Woo woo! Thank you guys for being here. And last but not least, next to me is Marwan McDaddy, who's the Citizens Climate Lobby Higher Ed and Youth Action Team here at the University of Michigan. So I'll let you guys, I gave you this the shortest of all, just your names and titles. If y'all want to just take a minute or two and say a little bit more about who you are, what you're doing this year. Go ahead, Marwan.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Marwan. I'm a student, a third year here at University of Michigan, and a volunteer with Higher Ed, which is the college student group of Citizens Climate Lobby. And I helped to spearhead the Be the Climate Goat, Get Out the Climate Vote campaign by Higher Ed and the Youth Action Team being the high school student group. And what it's about is basically getting volunteers to talk to people they know, friends, family, etc., about voting with climate change in mind, or turning out to vote if they already care about climate change, but they're not currently planning on voting. We have developed a couple different resources for this. We've created a script for talking with voters about climate change in a very non-judgmental way that allows them to open up about why they think about it in the way that they do, and it uses some very effective tactics that have been shown to have a 40% persuasion rate in the past. It's called deep canvassing. And then we also recruit some of the people we talk to as volunteers themselves in the process of relational organizing, and that helps maximize the impact. Some of you have already gotten the flyers for it. One QR code is for that script, and then one is for the volunteer app that we use. Yeah, that's essentially what it's about. So get out the climate vote.
Should we just go down in order? Sure, go ahead, Sandy.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sandy Serini-Elzer. I'm the Director of Advocacy of the League of Women Voters of Washtenaw County, and I'm also the chair of the Environmental Network for the whole state league, the League of Women Voters of Michigan. So I'm just going to take a minute, as got a nice audience here. I'd like everyone on stage to raise your hand if you've been affected by climate change. Have you been affected by floods, by torrential rains while you're trying to drive somewhere? Winters in Michigan where by January the grass is still green. We have the wildfire smoke. All right, so everybody keep your hand up. And now raise your other hand, which I can't do because I'm holding a microphone, if you have family or friends who are affected by climate change. So look around you. Everyone in this generation, everyone alive today is the first generation to be affected by climate change. And this is important. We are the last generation with the power to do something about it. So that's scary, but also we have the climate science to do it. So let's get out the climate vote and do it.
Right on. Thanks, Sandy. You
Hi,
can clap.
I'm Marielle Courtois. I'm the co-president of Turn Up Turnout, and TUT is the official student-led organization at U of M. We're a proud partner of the UMich Votes Coalition, so our faculty director, Jenna Bednar, was here before. And we work to increase student voter registration, education, and turnout on campus. We work with students, faculty, and staff to increase overall turnout on campus, and so yeah, we're working very hard year-round to ensure every student is able to get out the vote.
I'm Janet Zahn, one of the co-chairs, along with Nate Browbeery, who's also here in the room, of the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition. And our goal is mobilizing collective power to ensure an equitable, safe, healthy climate and environment. You know, we're working for a hopeful future in our community of the greater Grand Rapids area in Kent County. We're a grassroots alliance that has 93 member groups and hundreds of individuals that we represent, all working towards changing local policy and building a movement towards that just transition to clean energy and clean jobs, basically that hopeful future. When I started doing climate advocacy, I was like, I don't want to do that political stuff. I just want to do the environmental stuff. Well, I soon had to laugh at myself for thinking there was some distinction between politics and advocacy. So our group has, in 2022, the first time we did a climate candidate survey, and that's when we did our signs for the first time. We just said, what's the mission on the sign? How few words can we put? And it's like climate voter. That is as simple as it can be to let people know. So we're doing that again this year. And our group, because we're such a large group with a lot of different folks that are already doing climate work in some fashion or another, in the beginning of the year we determined as a group what are our areas of focus. And the big thing this year was it's an election year. What can we do? So this whole year we've spent working on our climate voter campaign, which will culminate in a climate march on October 12th. Anyway, we care a lot about it. We're glad to be part of helping steer the conversation towards climate with all of the candidates whenever you can. And thanks for being here today.
Can you guys hear me now? Great. I'm Lisa Del Bono. I'm the founder and president of a statewide organization called Michigan Clinicians for Climate Action. That we're a group, a coalition of health professionals of all stages of our career and all different types. And our mission is to cultivate a climate, if you will, that allows all people to thrive. So when we're thinking about what we're talking about here today, getting out the climate vote, we're adding the health perspective to that. Basically, we need to vote as if the health of the whole world is on the line in this election, and it is. So as we talk more, I will go through some of the ways in which we're getting that climate vote out. But I will just tell you that if you come to our table out there, we have some data that demonstrates how health outcomes correlate with access to voting and participation in voting. And we have buttons that have QR codes on them. So when you're talking to people and encouraging them to vote for candidates who take climate change seriously because it protects health, they can check and see if they're registered to vote and actually request a ballot by just scanning the QR code on your button. So we have tons of those buttons, and I really welcome people to pick them up for their friends, and walk around wherever you are and have one on so you can start a conversation and encourage people to register and get that ballot and make a plan to vote.
Well, I hope you can see why these folks are on the stage, right? They are doing incredible work statewide and in their communities to make this push and activate those voters. I read off a few stats, and I know our panelists here really watch those numbers as well. And so I want us to talk a little bit about the importance and the potential impact of that youth vote that you all are out there, the climate and environmental voters, and how we really do that. And I'd love it if Marwan would kick us off, because he is really steeped in the research, and the whole campaign they're running it really handles that issue so well. Marwan, what else should they know about who these voters are and what we're targeting?
Yeah, so when it comes to climate voters, the key thing to realize is there's a very large amount of people in this country who either think climate change is a minor or a huge problem. Over 60% in a lot of polls, if you look at Pew Research, for example. And if over 60% of Americans actually voted that way, like climate change is their top priority, we would probably be in a much better place than we are right now. And just for context about the power of voting, and not just young people voting, but everyone, and also talking to people about voting. Michigan, the election in 2016 in Michigan, the presidential one, was decided by, I believe, about 10,000 votes. There are 1,100 people registered for this summit. If 1,100 people at this summit talk to just, say, 5 people, like just 5, you persuade 5 people, and do that per week, do that for 5 weeks up until the election, you would easily clear that number. You would make a huge difference in sum and total. And of course, that's just at this summit. We have over 40,000 students at this university. So just by talking to people, just set a goal for yourself. 5 people, 10 people, whatever it is, it's your future really at the end of the day. And every vote counts, every vote makes a difference, and every vote in Congress makes a difference. The Inflation Reduction Act was passed by 1 vote in the Senate. I won't tell you who the tie-breaking vote was for the sake of being nonpartisan, but that's legislation, that's policy that saves people's lives. And that's the key thing to remember, is voting really does save lives. Climate policy saves lives. And we only get climate policy when we elect people who care about the issue.
He set you up perfectly. I think we should hear from Lisa next on this.
Yeah, thank you so much, and so beautifully said. So yeah, the next point is that, everything we do to address climate change is good for our health. So when we decide that we are going to vote for policymakers all the way up and down the line who care about climate change, who are committed to taking action on climate change, we are voting for our health and the health of our community. There is data that shows very clearly that within a given geographic area, the degree to which people have access to voting and participate in voting directly correlates with health outcomes in that community. So that is such strong data that the American Medical Association, the American College of Physicians, and the American Public Health Association have all called voting a social determinant of health. So we are trying to make that connection. We're trying to make that connection with our peers. And why do we need to make it with our peers? Well, very sadly and embarrassingly, health professionals are really lousy voters. They vote at like 12 to 24% less than the general public, maybe in part because they're busy, but there's really no excuse here in Michigan with mail-in ballots. So our first work in MiCA is to try to get our peers committed to voting and making sure that they're going to do that. And then we are encouraging them to make that connection to their patients. And it's really important to make it to their patients, because when you do that, when you're reaching out to your patients and encouraging them to register to vote, you're getting a whole different demographic, particularly if ER doctors do this. If ER doctors are working to getting patients to vote and recognizing that it's important for their health and the health of the community to do that, you are empowering a group of people who may not otherwise have access to voting. A lot of people who use the ER for the regular health care are people who don't have access to health care and often also don't have access to voting nor recognize how important it is. So I'm going to tell you in our next set of things a little preview about an organization called Vote ER that has set things up so that as part of our regular intake of patients, we can ask about voting and make this correlation.
Wonderful. Mariel, I saw you nodding because it's so similar to some of the statistics and pieces we hear about that all-important youth vote that everyone is after. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Turn Up, Turn Out and how that's going on campus and what you do?
Definitely. So very similarly, students in Michigan, so in the entire country, Michigan in 2022 led the entire country, again, just wanted to note, in youth voter turnout, and that was amazing. I'd like to think that students at U of M had a big part to play in that. Thank you.
Give her a hand.
And so we're really trying to keep that momentum up, especially in a bigger election this year, and some of the ways that Turn Up, Turn Out and UMich Votes is doing that is by meeting students where they're already at. So we table all the time, regularly, all around campus, and we try to partner with different groups to try and elevate our goals. But obviously not every student is as passionate about certain issues such as environment and climate, and so meeting them where they're already at, such as in the classroom, is one way that we've been trying to push out voter turnout. And so we've been going into classrooms in different departments. So we've been at the Ross School of Business this week and last week. And it's all nonpartisan, so just making sure that people are registered to vote, checking that they're registered at their most current address, and ensuring that, you know, the candidates that they are interested in, that we can provide resources with information to help them understand who they're voting for, what their vote is counting for, and overall, like, where their vote has the most impact. Obviously, there's a lot of out-of-state students, and so not everyone is going to be voting in Michigan, and just making sure that people, whether they want to vote in Ann Arbor or outside of Ann Arbor, it's really important to help students understand all their options.
And I think just like Dr. Bednar, to my other university colleagues out there, I know Western Michigan University is here and running some climate voter stuff. I know Saginaw State Valley University is here doing some climate voter. I think challenge on, UM. We got to share this title and get some more voters at all of our other campuses. I want everyone to have a minute to talk a little more detail about the specific campaigns and tools and resources that everyone is doing. And since everyone's going to answer this question, I kind of thought it would be also nice, you know, what have you learned so far in running your campaign this year? Is there something that really works? What are some of the common questions you get? Just, you know, the resource and tools that you're providing are massively important. And if you could frame that again, and you know, what's the personal stake in that? How does it feel to do this work? And whoever wants to go first.
I'll go ahead. I would say that with the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition, when we decided to do our signs this year, we thought it was really important to do it bilingual because we have a large Spanish-speaking population in Grand Rapids. So we did one side in Spanish and one side in English, and it gave us the opportunity to penetrate into some of the neighborhoods that perhaps wouldn't have been as interested to put a sign in their yard if we're speaking to people in the language they speak. Now, of course, there's many other languages, but that's, you know, we only have two sides to a sign, and so that was what we went with there. And then in terms of the candidate questionnaires, I would say two things. One, what's effective is persistence. We sent the questionnaire out in bulk twice, and then I sent it out individually to the candidates who didn't respond. Hey, it's Janet, and did that twice. And so I think that if you think about sometimes if you're overloaded with emails, do you answer the first time you get one? Sometimes it slips through, and if it's not on the front page anymore, oops, it's gone. So just not necessarily thinking that people are going to respond the first time you ask them was a good learning, because we got better results as we did more specific and repeated outreach. But the other thing that helped is we found a champion. One of the county commissioners is a strong climate champion, and so I would work with him. We had frequent conversations about, he's like, all right, who do you still need on the Dems that hasn't responded? And I'll go tell them specifically they better do it. So I would say, persistence and finding a champion are two things that can help you be more successful in getting that information that you want to share with the voters. So having it on our website and promoting it everywhere we can, including here, is one of the ways that you can also inspire people to respond. Hey, your information, your comments and your responses are going to be available for the people who are potentially voting for you. So I guess that's probably what I would add.
That's great. I'll just make one other point for those down ballot races, right? It's why it's so important. We've got the local groups, from our climate groups to the League of Women Voters, doing the county level races, right? Where you can really make a huge difference. I think, Sandy, you were going to talk next about, people know about Vote 411 already, I hope, but please tell them.
Yes, so if you have a chance, please go across the aisle to that big tent and stop at the League of Women Voters of Washtenaw table that has all sorts of information that you need to vote if you don't have it already. As mentioned, Vote 411, we have these little bookmarks. Does everybody remember what a bookmark is? Little bookmarks with a QR code that will give you a link. You put in your address, your zip code, and it'll give you a link directly to your ballot and to the candidates and questions that the candidates have answered or not answered about issues that are important to you, and we try to include some climate issues in this. Also at the table we have a Washtenaw County, your elected official, elected officials and information about them. And then statewide, we have a voter information for 2024. So all of these great resources are available. But again, if you go to vote411.org, you can get information about your candidates and your voting, how to vote, where to register to vote, all the four options of voting: early voting in person, absentee ballots were mailed today. Turn those in the drop box or mail them. And then you can also vote on Election Day, of all things. And then one other thing I want to mention, that the League has done for many years that's really important, are candidate forums. And we have state and local candidates for our area in Washtenaw County. So if you're in Washtenaw County, go to our YouTube channel, the League of Women Voters of Washtenaw YouTube channel, and you can see these forums where we ask candidates these tough questions. See how they react, and it'll help you decide, especially on the down ballot, help you decide the school board races or even the regent races. So very informative.
Thank you so much. And for those of you that are a little younger, 411 used to be the number you called for information. Okay? Yeah, I know. We're dating ourselves. It's okay. Lisa, you mentioned Vote ER. Tell us the specifics of that.
Yeah, sure, I will. So Vote ER is a group that MiCAN, Michigan Clinicians for Climate Action, has been partnering with to get out the vote. And they work all year round. It's a national organization, nonpartisan. And what they have done is develop a really unique way in which when patients come into the clinic or into the emergency room, the hospitals that are participating in this, and not all hospitals do, but we're trying to make it such that they do. When the patients come in, just like when you're asked as part of your intake, do you drink, do you smoke, are you registered to vote? That's one of the questions that they're asking the patients. And then brilliantly, if they say no, on their hospital badges is a QR code that they can then instruct the person who's not registered or doesn't have their ballot to actually take their phones, go to the website, and they can be told, in addition to all the other things they fill out while they're waiting to see the doc, They can register right there and then. They can request their ballot right there and then. And then as part of when they get in to see the clinician is to follow up with that. Did you register, and make that connection to why it's important to their health to be civically engaged and to actually participate in voting. And I wanted to tell one little anecdote. There's an ER doctor who was really burned out in Ohio, and his hospital decided to participate in this Vote ER project. And you know, when you're really tired and overextended, your initial thought is like, oh gosh, don't give me something else I need to do while I'm seeing this patient. Our time is so limited. No way, this is crazy. But after he had been doing it for several weeks, surprisingly enough, he said, I'm so surprised, but I am really energized by this process. It's not just that it's good for my patients, it's really good for me. It's good for my mental health. And I think we're all dealing with climate anxiety. We're all dealing with overstressed and overworking. And it really brings home the fact that getting back to why we are doing this is just inspiring and uplifting. So.
Thank you so much for that story. I want my doctor feeling good. I don't know about you, but I want him in a good mood when I go see him, right? Marwan, you shared a little bit about deep canvassing, and there's been a lot of great research on this technique as well that has a 40% persuasion rate. Dive a little deep for us. So how does it work?
Yeah, so the 40% persuasion rate was in a specific canvas. It was a group called Neighbors United in Canada. They were talking to rural mining town voters and getting them to back a 100% renewable energy guarantee. And basically, it's just about having non-judgmental conversations with people where you get them to open up about why they think about an issue in the way that they do. And you ask them a series of questions and lead with listening as opposed to imposing your own viewpoint. And then you kind of give your own experience that informs why you think about something in the way that you do, why you care about climate change, for example, when you vote. And as far as how it relates, I think, to the work that CCL Higher Ed is doing, I'm going to take a page out of Sandy's book. I'm going to ask, how many of you know people who either aren't sure if they're going to vote or they're not sure if they're, how they're going to vote? And raise a second hand if this applies to you. How many of those do those people have things happen to them that are caused by climate change? So if those people recognized the impact they make when they elect people to office to act on climate change, it's not just dealing with all these big numbers. People hear about these thresholds, 1.5 degrees Celsius, and they're very important, but it's it can overwhelm some people. And the thing they have to understand is climate policy will actually deal with the things that are affecting you. Here in Michigan, we had the floods last year in the Detroit area. Climate action will help make things like that less likely. It'll help combat, the harsher straight winds, harsher storms. I'll give one really powerful example, and I wish more people knew about this. There was a clean energy standard that was being considered by Congress in 2021 that was estimated to be able to reduce enough emissions to save over 300,000 lives. That was per a study by researchers at Harvard and Georgia Tech. It had 49 votes in support of it in the Senate. All it needed was one more vote in support of it to get it through, and it didn't have it. I won't tell you the name of the senator, but one person in the Senate, one vote, literally just one person in government made all the difference in 300,000+ lives being further at risk. That's our lives, not just young people. Anyone you know who is impacted by smoke from the wildfires in New York or the Northeast, per se. Like I said, here in Michigan with the floods. Out west, also with wildfires. All these different things, whether it's big or small, it's your life that's impacted by this issue. But the positive thing is it can be dealt with. Like I said, that policy got tanked by one vote, but the Inflation Reduction Act passed by one vote. Mm-hmm. So, and these votes, again, elections are being decided by extremely narrow margins. 10,000 votes or less than in some instances.
that is very narrow. And so by voting, you have a much more outsized impact in choosing the people who will make your life better, who will give you a better future and deal with those things that you're already seeing. And so deep canvassing is basically just about getting people to make the connection between the personal stakes of climate change, not just the big numbers and all that, but like this is something that's impacting you personally. It's impacting me personally. And once they realize that can be dealt with by people in government, and we get that when we vote.
Thank you so much for the work you're doing, Marwan. That was great, and it always reminds me too. The deep canvassing technique really follows the first rule of communication, and that's to listen. Listen first, and meet folks where they are. And Marielle talked a little bit about that already. It's very similar with our student population and the work you're doing. Meeting them where they are. Tell us more about where students can get information, the drooling, worthy station here on campus, and all the things.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the other panelists for highlighting just, how passionate people are and why it's important to, if you're passionate about the climate, it's obviously very important that you get out and vote. So some ways we're doing that on campus. Turn Up, Turn Out has weekly tabling. The ones that we're always doing, I don't want to get it wrong, so I have to look. We're going to be at the Shapiro Undergraduate Library. We've been there since the beginning of the year on Tuesdays from 1 to 3 to help register and answer voting questions for students. We're at the Michigan Union every Wednesday from 4 to 7 p.m. And then we're also at the Duderstadt Gallery on North Campus from 1 to 3 on Thursdays starting in October, so next week. And then very excitingly, the UMich Votes Coalition, we're a proud partner, opened the University of Michigan Museum of Art, so UMA. If you're familiar, it's a new voting hub. We just opened a few days ago, and it's open 12 to 6 every weekday and from now until the election. And it's super unique because the Ann Arbor City Clerk and the Ann Arbor City Clerk staff, we work with them directly. They are at these sites, and it's not common to find city clerk staff at a college campus, let alone on the college campus, every day, starting in September until the November election. It's a very unique situation that University of Michigan is super grateful that we have this partnership with them. And so for any community member or student, faculty, staff, whoever it is, who has any voting questions, they can go to that UMA hub starting now until the election. And then later in October, there is a North Campus voting hub that will open at the Duderstadt Center as well. But lots of resources there to help as well.
That's fantastic. It's so huge to have those satellite clerks' offices in the places where people really, really need them. And I'll just make one program note since we mentioned the museum, UMA. I know you're in this panel, so you maybe haven't made your way over to the Union yet today. But when you walk by all those tables and the diag, UMA's right on your way to the Union. And so if you want to check out that satellite clerk station, again, Dr. Bednard says she's drooling over how beautiful it is. Now I got to go see it as well. And the other program thing I'll just mention real quick is Michigan Climate Action Network does a Climate Champion Awards. This will be our 3rd annual award, and the theme this year is paired with the Summit on Climate Civics. And I mention it because somebody should nominate all the people that are up here for that, and as you're out here today, you're gonna see all the folks who really are making that connection between climate and democracy. There's a professional award, there is a volunteer award, and there is a youth award. I bet you're gonna find someone today who you should nominate for that and stop by one of the MiCAN tables to do so. I wanna, the word was mentioned earlier, and you guys are being so great and on time. We probably will have time for questions, so be thinking about those, and Deirdre Nieves is here someplace, and will have some cards for us, is how we'll do that. We're a small enough group, we might be able to just handle it as well. But do be thinking about some questions. But before we go there, you mentioned the word nonpartisan. And it's so important to this work. Meryl, let's turn it back to you. How do you just stay nonpartisan, and why is that so important?
Yeah, so the UMich Votes Coalition is, we pull from faculty at the Stamp School of Arts. There's people from UMA, the museum, and from the Duderstadt Center. So not everyone is inherently, from a political or voting space, but it's really beautiful that we have all these different people coming together to create this coalition. that provides a lot of helpful resources for students on campus. And so part of that work in the coalition is, you can't just start in September for a November election. We've been working for over a year and very hard as well over the summer to craft very specific language so that we are being nonpartisan and not trying to lean on either side. And so crafting the most neutral language as possible for the website that is pushed out by faculty, staff, and students. It's important that we are just being informative and not persuasive. And then very helpful as well in the coalition, I mentioned the stamps professors. So we have a lot of different handouts that we've created, from bookmarks and little like zines, so mini magazines, just so many different handouts that are nonpartisan. They have different resources. So there's one that specifically talks about if you're registered to vote, what do you do now? Or if you are voting out of state, different topics like that that are very helpful for anyone in the community, not just students. And then obviously pushing out, as Sandy mentioned, Vote 411, we push that out as well. It's a super great nonpartisan resource that has so much information. It's very user-friendly, so that's one of the other websites that we push out to students. But nonpartisanship is so important, ensuring that every student who's able to vote, eligible, can vote is our main priority.
Awesome. Sandy, I know that I always have borrowed, I'll use that word, all of my nonpartisan guidelines from the League of Women Voters, frankly. So tell us how you do it.
Yeah, so the League of Women Voters has always been a nonpartisan organization, and as you probably know, that means that we don't support particular candidates or particular parties. And the table outside is our voter services table, the Washtenaw League Voter Services table, and that's the nonpartisan 501c3 education arm of the league. We also have, and we keep that separate because we want voters to trust that the information that the league puts out in our candidate forums and otherwise is nonpartisan, it's accurate, it's true, and it doesn't take the sides of either party. On the other hand, we have an advocacy arm. That's our 501c4 arm. That's what I've been doing mostly with the league, is working on advocacy. The league will study issues that are important to it, mainly voting and other areas. However, the league has also studied the issue of climate change, and the league agrees that climate change is a serious threat. And so the league has developed policies then to help push forward solutions to climate change. So it's a balance between the education 501c3 and the advocacy 501c4. However, in either one, we never support particular candidates or parties. So we support, however, legislation. For example, the State League, I'm on their State League Advocacy Committee, we will look at all the bills that come before our legislature, and we will either support or oppose them. And then we will when it comes up for a vote, we will let our membership know so they can let their legislators know. So we try to keep that balance of nonpartisan, but we also have this advocacy place as well.
Thanks for that. Again, I learned everything that I'm doing from you, same positions. Janet, you and I have talked a lot about this as well, how we stay nonpartisan and how it shouldn't be a partisan issue.
Right. Well, the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition doesn't endorse any candidates either or parties. And because we focus so strongly on the local candidates, the elections for our mayor and city commission are nonpartisan. So that issue is moot, but you can see, you can tell a little bit what people's leanings are based by whether they responded and how they responded. The county commission, however, is partisan, and I have to say we haven't mastered the way to get participation from the Republicans. Almost every Democrat responded to our candidate questionnaire, and not a single Republican did. So what that says to me is we have some work to do to find the language that uncovers our common ground, because we know we have those same values around, we want affordable energy, we want good and clean and affordable healthy food, and we want all of the same things. It's how can we frame the questions in a way that will bring responses from the broader candidate pool. And so I guess I would say that's where we still have stuff to learn, but we're doing our best.
Absolutely. We don't get to over 70% of Michiganders believing climate change is an issue and 66% being concerned without crossing ideological lines, folks. My response to that is always, it is not a partisan issue. The politics have made it so, but it is not out there. And Marwan, that's again why your work about listening and how do we talk to those folks who are just disagree with us and the difficult conversations.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the script with the QR code, you'll see we take an approach that opens with issues. It opens with what do people actually know that's happening in their lives. Sometimes, and there's a benefit to a nonpartisan, non-candidate approach, because sometimes people hear candidate names and they get, immediately turned off and they tune out whatever you're about to say, even friends and family. And the benefit of a sort of deep canvassing approach like we have in the script, if you take a look, is we get people to just give an opinion on what do they already notice that's happening in their lives. Even if they're not like making the connection to climate change, it can be connected to climate change by you. You can be that person for them. Like I said, things happening in Michigan, whether it's something mild, like we have warmer winters now than we used to and less snow, or something more extreme, like with flooding or harsher winds. Just ask people, hey, are you concerned about this thing? What do you think about it? And, do you notice similar things happening in other places with climate change? It's just basically getting people to make these connections by asking them a series of questions. And you start with the thing that they're already feeling in their personal lives. And that's the approach we take with the script. And on average, our volunteers have said it is effective, that the people they talk to rate climate change as a more important issue after they've had the conversations with them, like their friends and their family.
Awesome. We got a lot of questions here, so I'm going to try to get to those. But first, are there any other events, policy pieces? We can just go down the line here that you want to plug real quick, and then we'll do a little closing thing. But there's some good questions. Go ahead.
Well, the event that I'd like to highlight is not related to getting out the vote, but we are having our first annual in-person meeting on November 2nd, right before the election, in Detroit at Wayne State. And we are, it's an environmental just health equity meeting in which we're planning on touring disproportionately impacted areas and hearing directly from the community about how we as health professionals can be better allies. And we'll have a workshop and a panel. So you can find that on our website, and thanks.
Yeah, the biggest event activity that's on the horizon for us is the Climate March on October 12th. Denise is going to be one of our speakers. We're so grateful she's going to come and help connect the dots between state and local politics, and how those, as she put it, the down ballot candidates are where we can make the biggest difference, and it's why it's so important to know how your local candidates stand on the issues that you care about. So the Climate March, October 12th at the Calder Plaza in Grand Rapids, starts at noon and tabling at 11:30. We're hoping to bring a lot of people out with the idea of raising the bar around an equitable transition to energy democracy, clean energy, and getting the vote out. So that is our biggest thing, and everyone's welcome. If you want to come and walk with us, we would love to have you. Our information is at the table or online at grclimate.org.
I think just pushing out some groups for students if they're interested in this kind of work, and I'm sure Marwan can speak more to this as well, but there's Climate Blue, the Students for Sustainable Initiatives, Student Sustainability, and then Students for Clean Energy are just a few to name. There's a lot of different groups on campus. But for me, I just push out, there's 9 days of early voting in the state of Michigan now, which is new from the February primaries. So it begins on October 26th and ends on November 3rd. And so if you're interested in getting out your vote, you don't have to wait in a long line on election day. You have 9 days prior, starting on October 26th. So if you are eligible to vote, and you can, starting October 26th, you can go and vote early in person or return your absentee ballot from now till whenever.
So what I would like to point out is that the League of Women Voters of Michigan has a statewide environmental network, and we meet monthly on Zoom with our whole state. We have Alpena, Traverse City, Marquette, Copper Country, Lansing. Actually, Lansing was the one that had the idea for this. Ann Arbor, Holland, all areas of the state. And we meet to talk about what we're doing to get out to help fight climate change. And I'll just give you a couple examples of what we've done. Our Marquette League, I think it was, or Traverse City, I can't remember, had a tour of their composting facility and tried to raise awareness of the importance of composting. And we are going to have, as our group, on October 21st at 7 p.m. on Zoom, we're going to have a presentation on the community solar bills that have been pending, languishing in our state legislature for years and years and years. And we are trying to get those passed this year, maybe in lame duck. So we're going to have a panel of 3 speakers. John Freeman from the Great Lakes
Renewable Energy Association.
Renewable Energy Association.
I'm here
Yes,
for you.
thank you. I need my notes. We're going to have Missy Stoltz from A20 and Boath Tan of Vote Solar. So it's going to be a great presentation about why we need community solar for all those people who rent, live in dorms, who are in condos, who can't put solar panels on their roofs, and why it's important to make those public utility companies allow those community solar facilities to exist. So go to our League of Women Voters of Washtenaw website to see the link to get registered.
So I'm biased, but I'll plug Citizens Climate Lobby. Here at University of Michigan, we meet Mondays, 7 to 8 o'clock, typically in the East Quad building for students. And you can look up just Citizens Climate Lobby at University of Michigan and find the Maze Pages website for the contact. For anyone who's not a student, there is Citizens Climate Lobby here in Ann Arbor, and they have a table just outside at the mall with all the other tables. So please feel free, go check that out. And you can sign up with either organization or, the UMich one if you're a student. And we, do a lot of work promoting different pieces of legislation, important policies at the federal level in Congress, chief among them carbon fee and dividend, which is consistently ranked to be the most effective climate policy and the most effective policy for reducing carbon emissions.
Great. So there's a lot of great questions here. I'm going to take my liberty as moderator and mush them into kind of one larger question. Most of the questions have to do with sort of a culture of voting and how we really, in many ways, get back to that. As a political scientist, first, we have seen dramatic decreases in the amount of folks voting. Audience member wrote in, turnout in Michigan was 71%, and that was one of the best, right? But that's still not good enough. We're seeing those numbers go up. Folks are asking about how we get this into our families, into K through 12. What about high school students? What are best for first-time voters? And I think all those questions really have to do with this culture of voting. And maybe, I see you nodding your heads here. Go ahead, if anyone wants to help me respond to these. How do we really do that?
I can start. I think there's a lot of first-year students, whether they're undergrad or grad students, and so making the information as accessible as possible for people and as neutral as possible so they feel comfortable to ask the questions that they want to ask is important. We do work really hard as a coalition, but also as a student group, Turn Up, Turn Out, to make everything as easy as possible for students. So I mentioned before, we're meeting them where they're already at. We're not asking them to go out of their way and find us somewhere else. But if they are interested and they have the time, we are, everywhere on campus very regularly and always trying to partner with other groups as well. So I think just starting, especially in college, making it as easy as possible for people. We've seen through statistics that if you start at a very foundational level and you make it easy for people to vote, they will most likely continue to vote for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I would say if you're talking to people who just, they're not really tuned into what's going on with the election, they're not tuned into voting, ask them, hey, what are you concerned about? And make those connections for people between whatever you're concerned about is going to have a difference made by, the people in office, by who you choose. Sort of an aha approach, anger, hope, and the ask. You don't have to get them angry, but make sure, they're aware of something they're concerned about. And then give them some hope. Tell them, hey, something can be done about that. You're concerned about what's happening, whether it's more polluted air, more polluted water, whether it's more extreme weather. I'm concerned about that too, but that's why I'm voting, and I'm voting with climate in mind, because there's real things that can be done and have been done, real money that has been passed by the government towards cleaner energy, towards making clean energy cheaper for people, and then ask them, thinking about that, what do you think about that now? Will you vote now? Basically, get them to plumb the depths of their concern, what they're already worried about, and then say, hey, we can do something about that.
I think that changing the culture involves stuff that has already been mentioned, with the idea of meeting people where they're at and really listening carefully to what they care about, and then finding the link, because climate change is so broad. Is human health their biggest concern? Is the economy? Is food? Is transport? I mean, all of the things that encompass climate. People are, you don't even have to use the word climate change. I hate the idea of having to be stealthy about it, but sometimes, that works better, is just to say, well, what do you care about? And really show how that we can connect the dots. And then the other piece is just back again to the local aspect of things. Reach out to your elected officials at the local level, because guess what? Not that many people do. And they actually will listen. You may not get everything you want the first time you ask, but if you keep showing up and you keep having civil conversations, you can actually get somewhere, and the local campaigns are what build to the national. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I couldn't agree more with all the statements that have been made, and I certainly agree in terms of my personal experience, which I worked for a long time with Citizens Climate Lobby, just engaging in civil discourse with your policymakers is huge. And in terms of the human health part of it, though, that is a role that I think that we as health professionals could really contribute, both in terms of educating, as I talked about, in terms of civic engagement. If that's part of something that you engage with your health professional on regularly throughout the year, it suddenly raises it, elevates it to a level of, I walk, I eat less meat, I brush my teeth, I vote when the elections come. And that's the power I think that we could add to it. And I think we could also add the fact we can tap in that nonpartisan way. When you're talking about human health, we're talking about climate, both of those issues require collective action in order to have effective change, which in turn requires policy. So we do need to engage in the political process, but we don't have to be partisan, just as Denise said. And as health professionals, I think engaging regularly on both of those topics, connecting the dots to everyday health, can really change the discussion and the way we view it.
Thanks, everybody, for those remarks. I can't get to more questions, but you'll find these people all day. I want to give them an opportunity for the last word here. What should folks out there know? What do you want them to most know and go do? And Lisa, do you want to start at your end?
Just encourage people to vote like the health of the world is online this election, because it is.
Stole my words, yeah. I guess just know that the more you normalize these conversations and the more you make small steps, the more you build it into that culture change that we really need to make. And don't ever let someone tell you that your vote doesn't matter or that your small change doesn't matter, because it's the only thing that ever makes things start.
And because your vote matters, if you care, it's super important that you are able to actually cast your ballot. So again, early voting beginning on October 26th through November 3rd. If you're able to, you would definitely not hit long lines because it's kind of a secret. Not a lot of people know that early voting is a thing in Michigan yet. So if you can, definitely go early.
So I'm going to steal a line from Jane Fonda, who was here last week. She said, it's very important for you to vote and elect those climate elect those climate officials, and then make them do it.
If you're worried or you're scared or you're hopeful, don't rest on either. Don't rest on your fear. Don't rest on your optimism. Do something with it and actually make change. And you do that not just by voting, but by getting other people to vote, because really there's such a small margin of error, margin that really can change people's lives, that can save people's lives. Like I just said, a policy in Congress, one vote put thousands of lives at risk, and then at the same time, one vote maybe saved thousands of lives with investments in clean energy. And so, yeah, like was already said, don't ever let anyone tell you voting doesn't matter. One vote, it absolutely changes the whole picture. It changes people's lives, and it will change your life. And when people realize that, when the people who aren't tuned in as much, when you help them realize things you're already concerned about, things you're worried about, policy will make a difference in that. The people in office will make a difference in that. That will move at least some people, if not the majority of people, just knowing it does matter and it does make a difference when they understand the true power and impact that they have over the things they're already feeling.
What a great panel. Let's give these folks a hand. Couldn't have said it better myself. You guys are awesome. I know there were a couple questions we didn't get to. I'm sure these fine folks will hang out a little bit and talk with you. Most of them have tables over there. It's time for lunch, probably. Go listen to some music and enjoy the rest of your climate summit. I will see you somewhere else very soon. Thank you again, you guys. You were excellent. That was great. Give them a hand.